Your week has been going well so far. Thanks for joining us. We have got some great guests and information for you. First, we're going to be talking to Cara Fetty. She's a foster and adoptive mother. And yeah, I've been on this theme for a little bit here because I just find it shocking. I am sure you do too, that the government can come in and take your children. Well, yeah, if you've been abusing them, but what if you have not been abusing them? Everybody agrees. You're not at fault. There's nothing wrong with your home. How is it that the government comes in and places your children with strangers and moves them around, and you're fighting to get them back and you can't? Well, Cara Fetty is someone who is not the birth mother, but she's someone who entered in very purposefully to adopt unwanted children, and she had two, and she was challenged to give up one for the other. Challenged means threatened. And she's here to share that story with us. She is fighting to get her son back. And then we will be listening to, well, the interesting musician. He goes by the name Microphone. I was just saying, I actually don't know what his name is. He told me it's Steve, but I just know him as Microphone. Anyway, he is the winner of PHL Live Center Stage 2018 Gospel category. He's a gospel rapper. And he's got quite some story to share, and we'll be listening to his music as well. And then we're going to talk to Sue Doherty. She is a nutritionist, dietitian. She is the CEO at a nonprofit called Manna, and Manna is all about nutrition and health. Food is medicine, and they take that seriously for your benefit and mine. And so we'll be talking to our guests. I just want to remind everybody that last week we were talking to Millie Kress and her daughter Brianna, mother and daughter, who the family was separated by DHS. Again, nothing wrong she did. An anonymous phone call was unfounded. Nonetheless, 3 children were removed from her and remain removed from her as she fights to get them back. And they want to come home. We were talking to her daughter, Brianna, and all that has happened since then. Then we met a young veteran, Joe McCabe. He's a real estate entrepreneur, veteran-owned business, and all that he's doing, particularly, to help veterans in home ownership and things like that. And then we spoke to one of our top lawyers in Philadelphia, Nadim Bazar from Klein and Spector, who is a lawyer for abused children and other fields, but winning large judgments and, in his words, reforming the system through civil judgments. I have to thank the show's sponsor, Weinerman Pain and Wellness. They do a wonderful job in their profession, which is pain management and helping people get back to as full a life as possible after they've been injured. They're located at the Land Title Building. That's 100 South Broad Street, Suite 1800. That's right near City Hall. I've been there. Check them out. And of course, I thank them so much for sponsoring this show, which brings me, or allows me to bring you the guests that I have on. Well, at this time, let me introduce you to our first guest. And like I said, there are certain things we just don't expect in America. And one of them is that the government will not come in to your house without some legal basis to search for criminal evidence and put you in jail. We don't expect that. That's illegal, unconstitutional. But yet, so little attention is given to the fact that every day, parents who have done nothing wrong are being brought into court and having their children removed. In this case in particular, this is a foster parent, so it's not just natural birth parents, it's a foster parent. And she's here to tell us her story. Her name is Cara Fetty. And Cara, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Cara, you have testified in front of City Council regarding this issue.
I have.
Yes, and could you, for our listeners, just briefly explain to them what happened in your situation?
In regards to my specific situation with DHS, I am a foster to adopt parent specifically until I finalize any and all adoptions that I plan on doing, for which then I will just solely foster, but I have done that in the past. And I received a phone call last year in March that there was a 3-week-old infant child with no name who had been abandoned. And they were looking for a pre-adoptive home, they were looking for permanency. The mother had made it clear she wanted nothing to do with him, she wanted him adopted out, but had made no plans prior to leaving the hospital within the shorter amount of the 72-hour required time frame before she could sign any papers.
Right, and I'm gonna interrupt you just to let the listeners know that in your case, your own mother had been through the foster care system.
That's true.
And so you had purposely made a commitment to try to help and provide care and love to kids who were not taken from mothers who wanted them back, but children who were abandoned.
Correct, absolutely. And in my mother's case, she even aged out of the system.
Mm-hmm.
And based off of just some of my experience, she's made it very clear that she even feels the system's worse than when it was 50 years ago, which shocks her considering that she thinks it absolutely should be better and not worse.
Yeah, and for our listeners, I've said this before, but experts have testified that Philadelphia is an outlier, that it is a problematic city. We have the highest rate of removing children from parents of any large city in America. So anyway, we have looked at the reforms in New York City and other places, which are very sensible, and we're so very determined to make sure those reforms come to Philadelphia, because it appears the largest reason why children are removed from parents is not because of abuse, but because of poverty or some very subjective criteria that is very problematic. 91% of the children removed are not removed because of abuse or neglect. Anyway, I just wanted to say that so the listeners understood kind of what you were talking about. And so you made this decision, and then you had taken custody of this
Correct.
infant.
Correct. Within 3 hours. They
Yes.
called me, they let me know within 3 hours he was in my home. And they had made it clear throughout, there was a short time frame where we met with social workers and CUA workers.
Again, I have to explain, what is a CUA worker? Community Umbrella Agency. CUA, Community Umbrella Agency. They are a social service organization that the DHS has placed kind of in between them and the parents and the children. They're not government workers, but they are a private entity that acts on behalf of the Department of Human Services, DHS.
Correct. And during about a 3-day time frame, they do a lot of, people come into your house, they do assessments, they do interviews, they discuss the situation in the case with you. And in this particular case, the only discussions we ever had was based off of his adoption, his finalization, his permanency, as well as what should I do in regards to a baby with no name.
Right.
And I was by his CUA worker, and the judge who did the shelter care hearing, I was given permission to name this child. And I made it very clear to them that it would be a birth certificate name.
Right.
And so they were very happy with the name. They were glad he had a name. They were looking forward to seeing this through. It should only take the standard 6 months from the foster to adopt aspect. Round about the time frame of April 9th, we had the last meeting with the CUA worker where we discussed all the same information in this case and when's the next court hearing, and she didn't know that, and some additional information. And then when I still hadn't received insurance for the child because he was born premature and he was detoxing, so I had to get him in to see a doctor weekly.
Yeah, and let me say this, you're actually well educated and have a very good job.
I do.
Yes. But the costs of all of this, that is something that the child needs, medical care.
Absolutely.
And it comes through with the system that is placing in your care a child who's been basically abandoned by his mother.
Correct.
Yes.
More or less kind of a requirement. It's not something I asked for or anything.
Right.
It's something that the state automatically provides for these
Right.
children. But when I contacted the worker at the beginning of April, I was informed that the CUA worker had been removed from the case, and she did not know who was going to take it over, and she had no more information for me. No court dates, no insurance information, nothing. and required me to reach out to the social worker from DHS who had placed him, for which I did. And I was also informed at that point in time that the social worker had been removed from the case. She had no idea who got the case.
That is the DHS social worker.
That was the DHS
So
social
the
worker.
KUA social worker, the DHS social worker, both were removed at the case, like right in the middle of the case.
Right at the very beginning, within the first 2 weeks.
Okay.
Within the first 2 weeks. And so at that point in time, I was the only one who had any information, knowledge about the child. Nobody was giving me anything. I still didn't have insurance for the child. I do work with a private agency, or I did at that time work with a private agency where I have my own caseworker through.
Right.
And at that point in time, they also tried to reach out to DHS directly and was not receiving any feedback as well. And when they couldn't receive any information, then her and I worked together in order to choose the insurance, get him set up, I chose his pediatrician, I chose his daycare, his like everything I chose for this because nobody was helping, supporting, answering emails, phone calls.
Right.
They were completely disengaged, as well as what I consider a second abandonment on this child. When you've got nobody coordinating with you who is supposed to have his best interest.
Right.
And so, and I continued to inquire about information. I didn't know when next court hearings or dates were, just because I know that they're very important in regards to his permanency and how to move his case along to get it to where we can get to an adoptive format. But I kind of let it go because I was like, somebody will reach out to me. And round about the end of April, I panicked because I hadn't heard anything. And so I reached out to both the initial caseworkers and inquired about when the next court date was. And the day I reached out, I was informed it was that day. And I asked when the time was, and they said, we don't know, we're not on the case anymore. I said, are you going to be there? Is anybody going to be there to represent the child who has met the child and who has made any form of contact and discussion with me? And I was told no. And so I literally left work. I definitely communicated with my employer, but I left work and raced down to the courthouse, had missed the hearing, and was at that point in time informed that a private agency had somehow found mom, but we'll come back to that, somehow found mom, had received written documentation from her that she was going to place the child with the agency after he had already been determined abandoned and after DHS had already gained custody of him and placed him with the intent to adopt. But they would not give me any other information, and they said somebody from DHS will reach out to you.
So this private agency was in the court, unbeknownst to you, you didn't have the court
Had
date,
no idea.
no information. The birth mother did not want to take the child back, but was giving authority, according to them, to their agency to place the child, even though the child had already been placed with you.
Yep, and according to them, the biological mother was not at the court hearing as well. She had never shown up to any of
Right.
them. And so I immediately left and hired an attorney because at this point I didn't know what was going on. Nobody was talking to me. I asked when the next court date was because at that point in time they had decided they were going to push off this dependency hearing and that there would be a new court date. And they said they didn't know any information. I hired an attorney. We went through, what we needed to do. I let her know what was going on. Come to find out towards the end of May, a new social worker from DHS had been assigned 10 days prior to this next court date. That's when I found out about the court date, was 10 days prior to it. All I was informed about was that it was a dependency hearing, and they were going to determine the dependency of the child. He showed up, he stayed for 30 minutes in my house. He knew nothing about the case.
The
knew nothing
DHS social worker.
Correct. Knew nothing about the case, knew nothing about any information on the child, and asked me to fill him in. And so I filled him in, and I said, what should I expect? He said, well, my supervisor just says it's going to be a fight with the attorneys. I was like, what does that mean? He's like, I have no idea. Okay. So on May 29th, we went to the dependency hearing with my attorney, for which the private agency was also present. DHS was there, but none of the past social workers were there. And, with standard, you have the child advocate and everything. At that point in time, there was supposed to be a hearing for which there was never an actual hearing that took place. My attorney made it very clear there was dependency in this child, and she wanted to show the proof of the dependency. The child advocate made it clear that the child should not be removed from my home. I was his only mother and home and family that he had known, and that it would be detrimental to the child to be removed from my care. And DHS wanted to withdraw their dependency, for which nobody had informed me about.
Mhm.
I found out in that moment in court that that was what they were planning on doing.
So for the people listening, that's a lot of legal talk. What does it mean?
That's, so to remove their dependency, they're basically wanting to remove themselves completely from the case. They're wanting to remove any custody, temporary or not, from the case, and to hand it completely over to this private agency.
So that leaves you out of the picture.
More or less, that was their plan, to
Okay.
leave me completely out of the picture, because he was placed with me by DHS, so if DHS removes themselves, then they can do whatever they want with him, and I can't do anything about it.
Okay.
So, the judge allowed DHS to remove themselves from the case. However, the judge did not, verbally or written, make a statement on custody of the child. He did not transfer custody from DHS to the agency, nor did he grant custody back to the biological mother, nor did he make any statement that I had to hand the child over to anyone.
Right. So moving forward, what ultimately happened?
After that, the DHS representative that came into the case on May 19th and a representative of the private agency met me at his daycare center. They made a very clear statement that you do not mess with DHS, and that if I did not hand the child over, that they were going to, that it would ultimately affect any of my current and future adoptions of children. They very well knew I was in the process of adopting my son.
Okay, and who is that son?
The son that was fostered to adopt.
Yes.
Are you looking for a name, or are you looking for
No.
who is
In other words, there were two children involved, right?
Correct.
Right,
The-
we were talking about two sons. Well, we're talking about the one, the younger one.
The
But there
youngest
was
one.
another one,
There was
right?
another one who I had had since 8 weeks old, and he had just turned 1. And he was not an abandoned, and that was a decision, made by the biological mother that she wanted him adopted out through the foster system that.
So
he
you were in the
into.
process of adopting him.
I was in the process of
And they
adopting
met
him.
you at your younger son's
Daycare center.
daycare and said, basically, if you don't give up your custody of this child,
Of the youngest son.
we will not, they intimated that you would have a big problem
Correct.
completing the adoption of your first son.
Correct.
And so,
And at that point, it's one of those heart-wrenching, what do? They're making you choose between your kids. And it's either you pick one over the other, or you lose them both, because ultimately, it could also have turned into shutting my house down and losing both of them. And this is already a bad fight to begin with.
mhm.
It's very costly. I've hired 2 attorneys. I'm looking to hire a third. I am continuing this fight. It's been a year. And I will continue to do this fight.
So what happened to the child, the infant?
The infant is currently in the Netherlands. DHS gave him to the agency, again, without a court order or custody order. And they have since sent him over to the Netherlands with the anticipation of having him adopted over there.
So they came to the daycare and ended up taking custody of your son.
Correct.
Okay. And
By threat.
what was the threat?
The threat was the interference of the adoption of my other son that was in the process of happening.
Okay. Now, that adoption has been completed.
That adoption has been finalized.
Okay, so now you're free to fight.
I am free to fight, and I'm free to be public, and I'm free to voice what happened.
Right. Now, how are you fighting this fight?
Currently, I have 2 attorneys, and I have a GoFundMe page set up because it is very expensive. It is considered an international custody suit.
What's the GoFundMe page?
Of course, you would ask me that, and I'm
Yeah.
not sure. It's just called Foster to Adopt is what it's called.
Foster
But,
to adopt.
I have been very much criticized by it. If you Google my name, you will find it. And so, but I've gotten very negative feedback, because of this.
That's one of the challenges that we face, because so many people, out there in the public, they want to believe, and they believe that the system is there to help children, and it's not there to punish parents, and it does everything perfectly. And so when a person named Kara, K-A-R-A, Fetty, F-E-T-T-Y, is saying that her child was taken and that she was threatened and she's fighting the system, people are saying, well, you're doing a bad thing. However, as more information comes to light, people will begin to find that what they thought is not true, and many people are experiencing that. So I have run out of time, but I thank you for sharing your story
Thank
with
you.
our listeners. Very important matter. I'll ask everyone to stay tuned. We'll be back with the music of Microphone. Okay.
It's been a fun year. In fact,
I'm actually gonna.
I was so happy to get your, because it's been 1 year today since he showed up, and I thought, that's ironic.
Is he placed with anybody right now? Is he still in the system, you know?
Well, they also do what's considered a foster to adopt over there as well. They have to keep them for 6 months before they can start the adoption process. But as long as I keep legal filings open in the court system here, they can't finalize anything.
It's just so screwed up. Why? Like,
Yes. So, and the agency made it clear that they hunted the biological mother down to get her to sign the papers.
But the child's already placed, so it raised the issue, why are they
why?
hunting down the mother?
Why? Like, is somebody paying that
Exactly.
agency? Like,
Oh, that agency's getting tens of thousands of dollars for him.
for the baby.
Tens of thousands, yeah. So,
That,
and
yeah.
this agency is known not to place infants in the United States. They only send them to the Netherlands. Yeah.
I didn't even know that was a thing, that children born here in the United States can be sent outside of the country for adoption.
Almost everybody I've talked to said the same thing.
I had no idea, right? Because
Yeah.
you just hear so much of the
It's
need.
a
is
very
there's a need.
strange situation we have where, we had it. My guest last week, there was an anonymous phone call of abuse about the fiance, not the mother. They came out and they cleared the fiance, no allegations against the mother, but then the social worker said that they were removing children because there were no doors on the bedroom. But in fact, there are doors on the bedroom, and it's easily proven. But even if there weren't doors, why would you take,
Right.
like a 13-year-old, a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, they might have been a couple of years younger back then. Why would you bring them from the house? So anyway, they took them out of the house, put them in different locations, and since have been moving them around. And the mother is fighting to get the children out. And they want to come home. They're able to speak for themselves. They have said that there was no abuse and all that stuff, and there's doors on the bedroom. But this is a interesting process that we are engaged in. Okay, so I'm gonna ask the microphone to step over here. We can change seats.
By the way, you have a bombard of new listeners. I'm getting like bombarded on my phone.
What's that?
You have a bombard of new listeners. I'm getting bombarded with messages on my phone.
Yes, it's crazy, right?
Sell them every week from 2 to 3,
I will.
Yes.
every Tuesday.
I'm gonna put it on my Facebook.
So, we are playing with time here. So let me try to manage the time. Okay, not bad. Okay, we'll catch up. All right, we are back. Listen, I am sitting here with a creative gentleman, a rapper, a guy from the streets who has changed his life and shares his testimony through gospel rap. He goes by the name Microphone. He is the winner, and listen, I don't pick the winners. We have some amazing judges. They look at all these videos. It's free. Just submit your video of your musical performance, your YouTube video at PHLlive.org in one of 10 musical categories. And, we have Grammy Award winners and all kinds of folks who go through them. And then 5 finalists are selected. They perform live in these great venues. and our winner for gospel microphone. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you for having me here.
Hey, listen, I appreciate your music. We're going to listen to one of your, I call them clips, is that right? Tracks, I guess is the better
Tracks,
word,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay, I call them
tracks,
clips,
yeah.
right? So, anyway, and I'm not gonna change either, because I'm just too old to change, but,
It's alright.
yeah, no, so it's called Mr. Wonderful. What's Mr. Wonderful about?
It's birthed out of a scripture, Isaiah 9:6.
Mm-hmm, okay.
You know, it says, and he will be called Wonderful, talking about Jesus.
Mm.
That was one of his names. And
Right.
so, you know, I created my album and this particular song after that, you know, being, because he is wonderful, you know, he's
Mm.
wonderful to all of us. And whether we see it or feel it all the time, doesn't
Right.
change who he is. And
Right.
so, and that kind of resonated with my heart at the time that I was writing and just spending time with God. So that's where the idea came from.
You know, I never know why people win, to be honest with you. I'm not like an expert in music, I don't pretend to be. But I gotta think that at least one of the things that you brought to the table at the live performances was your originality, the fact that you write your own music and you share your story. But you didn't start out kind of like that kind of guy.
No.
So how did this transformation
No.
happen?
Well, I was actually, you know, just like the average type of musician or artist.
Mhm.
When I first started making music, I made music, you know, secular music. So, you know, I was doing drugs, drinking, alcohol, all those things, you know, making that type of music. And it got to a point where, you know, my life began to kind of down spiral down, and it's just, you know, I began to hear voices. It just got really dark for me.
You were doing a lot of drugs and alcohol,
Yeah.
not a little bit.
Yeah, and so, but I don't believe it was the drugs and the alcohol. I believe it was spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
And so it got to a point where, you know, I couldn't within myself carry on my life. And I had to give it to someone. It was either going to be the devil or God.
Right,
And I was faced with the choice one night, and I chose God.
right.
And
Well,
it was
what was
something-
special about that one night? Why were we faced with the choice?
Well, you know, like I said, I was hearing voices,
Mhm.
and not, I don't know how to. It's hard to explain, but it was so real. And that voice told me if I go to sleep, I ain't waking up. And so I tried to stay up all night, to be honest with you,
Right.
because I was afraid. And as in the middle of the night, I was, you know, every time I would doze off and get tired, and I would hear it with every time it would just don't go to sleep, like almost like nudging me, like.
Right.
And so then I heard I remember, you know, I don't know what happened. I just started to pray, to be honest with you. It wasn't nothing that I heard or anything said. I was in the bedroom by myself. I just began to pray. And when I began to pray, I heard a voice saying it's okay to go to sleep. And then the peace of God came on me. And from there on, you know, I went to sleep and I woke up. And so now I began to search that voice. Well, who was that told me I could go to sleep because I need to talk to that?
How many years ago was this?
This was about 10 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
And were you in a relationship back then? I can't remember.
With a person?
Yeah, yeah.
No.
Okay.
Nope.
I didn't remember if you had kids, you were
Oh,
married, or
nope,
anything,
nope.
so,
I
yeah.
was single.
Right,
Didn't have
okay.
kids and anything like that. Yeah. I was about 19,
Mhm.
19, 20, going on
Right,
20.
right.
I was 20 going on 21 as a matter
Right.
of fact.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so, we're gonna hear, this clip right now, this track, Mr. Wonderful, so our listeners can hear a little bit of what you do.
Sounds good.
All right. All right, all right. So that's an original piece by Microphone. Hey, where can people check you out, get your music?
You can, anywhere you listen to music,
Mhm.
iTunes, Spotify, Tidal, SoundCloud, YouTube, wherever you listen to music, you can go find it. Just go to Microphone, type in Microphone, Mr. Wonderful. It'll pop right up.
Okay. You got any gigs coming up? Any concerts, stuff you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, this Saturday, I'll be
Mhm.
performing live at the Notes of Hope benefit concert. It's held in New Jersey, Egg Harbor, New Jersey, at the Cathedral Event Center,
Mm-hmm.
and starts at 7 p.m.
Okay,
I'll be there. I'll be performing the song we just did. Mr.
Okay.
Wonderful.
pretty good.
I sound pretty good live, so come on out. If
I
you
heard
can.
you live. Sounds great live.
Yeah, so come on out if you can.
Okay, and where can people get tickets for that event?
Well, if you follow me on Instagram,
Mhm.
check out my Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, at I Am Microphone, and all the information is there. I'm constantly posting it, and I have links and stuff like that.
I am microphone, as in the letter I, A-M,
Yes.
microphone,
Yes,
right?
IAM Microphone on all social media platforms, and I'll pop right up.
Okay. Now, how do you see yourself in this musical genre? Is it about the music? Is it about the testimony? What is it really that drives you to do this?
The people,
Mm,
the people.
Yeah.
People need inspiration. People need hope. People need, just motivation,
Right.
and affirmation that they are loved, that they're not alone. And I think that music is the most influential tool on earth
mm.
because everybody listens to it.
Right, certainly universal, right?
Absolutely. And so if my music can for 5 minutes or 3 minutes can tell someone that they have a purpose in life, or
Mhm.
that they have something to live for, or that someone loves them outside of themselves, then I did my job.
Right. Now,
So-
now how can people get in touch with you? They say, hey, listen, I like the sound of this young man. I want to bring him to my church. I want to bring him to my school. I want to bring him to, I'd like him to perform at something. How do they reach out to you?
Man, you almost made me get my number on here.
Oh, okay, all right. You're not supposed to do that?
But you can hit me up at microphonebooking@gmail.com.
Okay, there you go.
Also, if you hit me up on social media, I respond back, and
Okay.
we can talk there, and go wherever. I'll go wherever. I'm willing to come out and share with whether it's youth benefits. It doesn't matter. I'm there. Anything. I just want to serve.
Okay, fantastic. Finally, what does the future hold for Microphone?
The future holds, my goals is to continue to minister the music,
Mm-hmm.
and just inspire the world. My aim is to affirm, inspire, and motivate people in every aspect of my life. So whether it's through music, whether it's through everyday living with my family, with my kids, with everything, just to spread the love of God
Mm.
everywhere I go, and hopefully that when people come in contact with me, they feel like they've come in contact with God.
Okay, well, that's perfect. Well, everybody, that's Microphone. Check them out. And stay tuned, because we will be coming back with Manna. Manna from heaven, manna from the sky. It's a nonprofit organization. It's about food and health. We'll be talking with the CEO, Susan Doherty, right after this commercial break. Okay, pretty good.
Awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, we're gonna switch seats. Susan, you're in this seat.
Hmm.
Rolling.
Yeah. Now, we got the state of it.
It's full of that.
Councilman.
Was that my phone? What about
It
Yeah,
died.
your battery died.
it? It died?
Right.
That's why you left it in the car. 'Cause you
Still
shut it.
doing it with mine before it died.
Oh, okay.
I share it with your page.
Oh, okay, good, good.
Stomach is on my goodness.
Okay, so you are the final interview, so it's 2 minutes, 1 minute, wrap it up, and then, so I,
Knock me over.
yeah, I would try not to abruptly end, but I do that sometimes. It just goes by so quickly,
Yeah.
you can't get everything you wanna get in there.
Doing a lot is tough.
Yeah, it is,
A lot
it
is
is.
tough, yeah.
Yes.
Excuse me.
So insurance companies will give you a rebate, a discount if you join the gym.
Right.
Is that kind of like the same thing, or it's a little different?
No, there's just a handful of insurance companies that will, kind of like when you get a prescription for your hypertension medication,
Mhm.
high blood pressure, you go to the pharmacy.
Right, they give you,
Yeah,
right.
this amount of those that prescribe diet, they pay us directly
Mm.
through electronic
Okay.
fees, just like they would medication. We're treating it more like treatment.
Right, so the goal is to get on the level of just kind of like standard treatment, giving you a
Right.
nutritional diet to deal with your high blood pressure, your depression, your weight situation, whatever it is, and then it's-
Being prescribed, but
Right.
it's not accessible. So the
Right.
goal is, we do a lot of
Right.
advocacy work to get it.
Right, so you do that already, but now you're also advocating.
Policy change
Right.
at the
Okay.
federal and state
Right.
level.
Okay, makes a lot of sense.
They pay for nutritionists, I don't know why they wouldn't pay for something
And
like
they pay
this.
for physical therapy, but they won't pay for therapeutic meals, you know? It's
Yeah.
so crazy to me.
But that kind of reveals where we are in society, and
Yeah.
we don't think of it that way.
It's like we're up against the pharmaceutical industry.
Well, it is, I mean, my mom is in her third treatment of cancer, and we keep telling her, it's the food you eat, it's the food you eat.
Yep.
But no, chemotherapy apparently is better.
Is she in the area?
Yeah.
She should reach out. That's, I mean, she would be eligible for that new program.
All right, I'll
I'll
look
give
you
her
up.
the card
Yeah,
behind it.
okay, that sounds good. Yeah, I mean, I did so much research, and I'm like, Mom, you can kill it yourself if you just eat the right foods.
My sister just passed away from cancer on New Year's Day.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She had leukemia.
Oh,
She was like, she did her bone marrow transplant, and she, they knocked all the cancer out, but, the transplant fought back against her blood cells, so it made her fought.
and then
Okay.
just went downhill from there.
All right, we are back. Listen, we were talking to Cara Fetty, foster adopted mother, fighting to get her son back out of the Netherlands, and we were listening to the music and testimony of Microphone. He is the winner of PHL Live Center Stage 2018 Gospel, and now we are sitting with Susan Doherty. She is the CEO of Manna, and she's going to tell us what that means, but she is a registered dietitian and a licensed dietitian nutritionist. Susan, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Hey, what does Manna mean?
So Manna, we're all about food as medicine. So
Mhm.
we've been around for 29 years. We were founded during the HIV/AIDS crisis. We're really our founding members. We're providing nourishment through comfort, right? So
Mhm.
we were
Right.
unfortunately at that time we were dealing with end of life issues. So thankfully, with the advancement of medications, there was a shift and people with HIV and AIDS started to live, and so Manna shifted. And that's when the science was born of Manna. We shifted our focus from helping people to not dying, to helping people to live. Today, we're very disease specific, so we serve all illnesses. We touched about 85 different illnesses last year, and we are all about complete nutrition. So we provide nutrition education 21 meals a week at no cost to our clients.
Wow.
And we could not do that though without the Army of Volunteers. We're serving about 1,300 people today, and we have a staff of about 40, but we have about 6,500 volunteers that make it all
Wow,
possible.
wow. Yeah, truly driven by volunteers.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, it's interesting because we were talking about, just kind of the irony of, kind of like how everybody understands that it's important, like what you eat, and certainly, you know, our highest paid athletes, they have all these very specific diets, the movie stars, they go on these super diets, you know, that are good for them, but get them where they want to be, and yet, you know, the concept of food as medicine is still kind of foreign to the public.
Yeah, we're out there advocating all the time to really for policy change, so that someday
Mhm.
when you get a prescribed diet, you'll get access to that. And it's just, people still look at us and they think food, and that's not how we think. We think treatment.
Right.
And certainly as a dietitian, and, I'm gonna date myself back to the day of pagers, right, beepers, when I
Mhm.
worked in the hospital system. But nothing would be more frustrating, right, than I would get that page and I'd go into a patient's room who was sitting there with their jacket on, getting ready to be discharged. And they would have a really complicated diet, right? Maybe 2 grams sodium, 4 grams potassium, 4 grams phosphorus, 2,000 cc fluid restriction. And you get like 2 minutes to like say, hey, go do this.
Right.
And I don't understand. I don't understand why I should treat it any differently than any other prescribed medication.
Yeah, because when you go to the hospital to visit a loved one or someone, you expect hospital food. You expect that someone is watching their diet, making sure they're not getting too much sugar, too much salt. You're expecting that, that the food is really managed. And yet when you talk about food as medicine and what you just said, we have professionals, healthcare professionals who are trained, licensed, and they prescribe, you must eat this, you
Yes.
should eat that, but yet that's treated as kind of like a menu at a restaurant. Oh, the fried chicken with the ice cream at the end.
Right. It's just, it's hard, I mean, I know we hear from our clients all the time that they're so thankful
Right,
that MANA exists, and, with some of our partnerships, because we've had research that was
Mhm.
published,
right,
demonstrated that not only do our clients have better health outcomes, they save the
Right.
healthcare system tremendous cost.
well,
And so with that,
that's a big issue right there. The cost of healthcare is unmanageable.
it's crazy, and we've seen success of
Mhm.
anywhere from 19 to 30% overall reduction in medical costs with our intervention. And so with that, we've been able to actually expand across the state of Pennsylvania,
Mhm.
where we can ship meals to individuals who we can, deliver to by trucks. And what we hear from the patients we're serving over and over again is that it's just such a huge burden that's been removed, and the stress that they're dealing with. And if they have children in the household under 18, or if they're the primary caregiver for an elderly parent in the household, we make sure everyone in the household receives nourishment. We know you can't show up and deliver meals to a mom who's battling breast cancer, who has 3 young children, and the mother's not gonna wanna make sure her children are taken care of. So we make sure the whole household is taken care of.
So, you were talking about the study that was published in the Journal of Primary Care and Community Health, and that actually evaluated the impact on health outcomes and healthcare costs of providing medically appropriate nutrition.
Yeah, and it was the first of its kind. One of the really interesting things
Right.
was when we partnered with researchers, because I'm certainly not a researcher, but, the first thing they did was they did a lit search, right? They wanted to see what other research was done, and nothing done in the field of just providing therapeutic meals, nutrition, education, and the impact. So it really was groundbreaking research.
What is the range that your organization deals with? Because once you say, like, for example, a mom with breast cancer, and of course, right away, all the listeners are, oh yeah, good, you're giving her the meals she needs for her energy and making sure she's healthy, getting those vitamins and other things, minerals to make sure she's at her optimal health to deal with recovery and fighting breast cancer. But what about things like depression or just being overweight or underweight? Do you do that as well?
So certainly I would say that there are comorbidities of clients that we
yeah.
serve. Our focus is really on that acute nutrition, so people that are acutely at risk, who
Right.
are actively going through treatment or
Yes.
just post-surgical. That may be shifting though, as we work with insurance companies and we see our impact can have a longer lasting.
Preventative and
benefit.
sustainable health,
But we definitely work with the other
Right.
supplemental meal programs in the Philadelphia area to, when people are cycling off our programs, and maybe they don't need 21 meals a week anymore, but they need some type of nutrition, we work with the other supplemental meal providers.
How do folks get in touch with you? Like people listening and saying, oh, I didn't know that even existed. You mean you're
Sure.
gonna ship me my meals, everything that I need to follow up on my doctor's instructions? And, I have to go shopping myself and buy lettuce and spinach and, so How do they get in touch with your
Yeah, so
organization?
the easiest way is to go to our website, which is manapa.org, so it's MANNAPA.org.
Right,
They can certainly contact us via phone, 215-496-2662. And then certainly, you know, if you're in care and you have a healthcare provider, you should certainly ask your healthcare provider about MANA. But, you know, we can walk you through the process, you can call us directly, and we'll make sure and go through your criteria to see if you're eligible for the meal program. And then quite honestly, I think it's the best kept secret ever, is that our dietitians will talk to anyone, right? So if you just have some questions or some nutritional information you're looking specific to your illness, you know,
Right.
we can help you with that as well.
okay, that's very interesting because, that is such a great service, and, we have all these volunteers. How do you sustain that financially?
So, you know, through a lot of philanthropic support and certainly the volunteer workforce, right? So the fact that people come every day, we have probably 100 to 150 individuals a day in our kitchen that
Wow.
help us to be able to keep down costs.
That's a big
obviously.
kitchen.
It's a big kitchen, and, you know, come visit us. We're right on
Right.
off the Parkway, but it's truly, it's inspiring. You know, I've been with the organization for a long time, 19 years, and I still pinch myself every day that I get to work with this amazing
Right.
group of people that just are dedicated and they really believe. And I think it's really tangible. I mean, that's what we
Right.
hear from the volunteers.
Yes.
They see, you know, they're making the food that they know is going to make a difference in someone's life.
For folks who want to, you know, come visit, and for those who want to make a contribution right now, listening to this fantastic story, how do they do that?
So this is the best time of year. If you're interested in learning more about MANA,
Right.
spring, we're filled with events. So you
Oh,
can certainly
cool.
go on our website to learn how
Right.
to volunteer.
Yeah.
But we have so many fun events coming up. We have an
Mhm.
event, Shut Up a Dance, April 13th, where the
Mhm.
ballet puts on a one-night performance only,
Oh,
and it
okay.
benefits MANA.
Right.
We have a MANA Feast event. We have an event in May. So we know how to throw a party. We have a good time. So there's lots happening. There's a guac off event in May if you like guacamole. So
Yeah.
all that information is right on the website.
Okay, all right, so check that out. Now, let's talk about the advocacy, because, you know, what you're really talking about is food that supports the recovery from, or that helps a person with these acute illnesses. And what is the goal? What should we be expecting with this policy change?
So last Thursday, we
Mhm.
just launched a division of MANA called the MANA Institute, which is
Right.
a research and evaluation arm, which is really solely dedicated to getting more research and more evidence out there
Right.
on our impact. Because
Right.
really the ultimate goal is we want policy change at the federal level. We want therapeutic meals to be a mandated covered service for all insurance plans and accessible for all across the country.
Right.
We don't necessarily need to be the ones doing it, you know,
Right,
but we
right,
want it to
right.
be accessible, and so
Right.
lots of advocacy and policy work in that area.
So for my listeners, I mean, basically, just as a doctor would prescribe medication, you go to your pharmacy and you purchase it and it's covered by insurance.
Yes.
The meals that are part of the recovery, the nutrition, getting stronger, fighting off, you know, the acute illness, that is prescribed by a doctor, and then the people, instead of just trying to pay out of their pocket and make it themselves or hire someone, they could get it through an organization like MANA, and that
Correct.
would be covered by the insurance as well. So that is food as medicine, and what a natural way to deliver vitamins and nutrients and all that in helping people to recover.
Absolutely, that is the goal. So our research, we're working with a
Right.
handful of insurance plans, and someday we want to be working with all of them.
Right, so it seems pretty natural, but why the resistance?
I think it does go back, you know, I talk with our insurance plans, and all of them kind of start working with us, usually with the diagnosis of diabetes, right? Because
Right,
people kind of get that a little bit.
Right.
People go, oh, diabetes, oh, right, you have to have a special diet. But
right,
when you start talking outside of diabetes, wound care, kidney disease, liver disease, different cancers, and the impact that nutrition can have, they're a little hesitant, right? They still go back to food, and they worry about, which is hard, you know, they start thinking about entitlement and forever, and how are they gonna do that? Where, you know, when you prescribe insulin, you're not thinking, oh my God, is this forever? You know, like,
Right,
it's
right,
interesting to me,
Yeah,
and we have
exactly.
studies where people have come off of insulin and been controlled through a pill and therapeutic meals, or off
Right,
medication
right.
completely.
Right,
So if that's the case, it just is better cost and better health outcomes, but it's just a philosophical way of changing people's shifts to say,
Right.
you know, we are not talking about food. Let me tell you, our dietitians and our chefs, they battle it out for 6 months, you know, to design a 6-week menu cycle
Right,
that
right.
meets all the right nutrition, because people are battling multiple illnesses, so sometimes they're on a combination of different diets, and a product that tastes good. So it's really complicated. I say all the
Mm.
time, I'm a dietitian, you know, and it would be hard for me. And so for the population that we're serving that don't have 6 years of food science and nutrition education,
Right.
it's challenging.
yeah, I mean, I guess one of the things that comes to mind is everybody's got, not everybody, but almost everybody, we think everybody is having like a refrigerator and a cupboard full of food. And then depending on what you decide to buy and how you chop it up and mix it up, so like, okay, we can make our own healthy food, but it's really not that simple. I can take a bunch of chemicals or whatnot and mix my own drugs and put a needle in my arm, but you can't just do it that way.
Right.
And so for our listeners, what do you think? Do you think, like, when you're talking about, putting together nutrition plans and having them, deal specifically with certain types of acute illnesses and recovery, that takes, really trained, specialized folks to put that together, and so that it meets the prescription of healthcare professionals, that is part of medical care and should be covered by insurance, so that everyone can receive that medicine through food.
That's the goal.
Yes, wow, that's so interesting. So how's the fight going?
It's going, you know, we're fortunate here in 2015, we signed our
Mhm.
first contract with Health Partners Plans, was the
Yep.
first insurance plan.
Okay,
Bill George and his team there are pretty incredible, and since then, we've signed 7 contracts, but,
Mhm.
you know, the reality is, we're serving about 1,300 folks today, and about 300 are being reimbursed through insurance, but
Right.
1,000 are still through philanthropic support.
right.
And so we won't stop advocating until everyone gets access. And I've been there with my food models, right, as a
Right,
dietitian.
right.
And the reality is that I know, that maybe that household, that individual is going back to a household that they don't have that. And we don't have a financial criteria at Mana, but the reality is over 95% who we're serving fall well below poverty, and they
Mhm.
lack resources. And so
Right.
this is critical for them in their treatment, and for them to win the fight for their life.
How can our listeners join your fight, should they choose to?
I would say, get engaged. There's a way to get
Mhm.
engaged in Mano on all levels. Certainly, any donations are always appreciated, but volunteer is critical for us. And then the events, there's an event for everybody. So go to our website, manapa.org, and I'm certain there's something that will be interesting for you.
Okay, well, that's excellent. So thank you very much for joining us and sharing all
Thank
of
you.
that. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, listen, we have been talking with Susan Doherty, CEO of Mana, and Google them. That's what I do, MANNA, all that they do, everything that's coming up, how you can participate. Check out Microphone. I am Microphone Philly. You could Google him as well. I say Microphone Philly, Microphone Philadelphia. That's how I found him. But yeah, he is serious about his message, uplifting people. His connection with his faith through rap. And then, of course, Cara Fetty. She has a GoFundMe page. She's got 3 lawyers. She is fighting, and it is just shocking that this is happening in America. You would think that this is not something that would happen in our country. Each of us may not fight on our own, but certainly there's someone else out there fighting for the principles, the Constitution, all that we believe in, and we're lucky not to have to fight this fight, but certainly we want to support them as they're fighting for what I think are just basic human rights and legal rights of a mother and her children, or a foster mother adopting her children, that if there is no problem there, everything is going well, how did the financial interests enter into this picture to rip the child from her arms and her home? Cara Fetty, check her out, KaraFetty. And listen, yeah, there's a lot of people who will have opinions without knowing. And fortunately, they have not had this type of problem, and we hope that they don't. But in my work as a Philadelphia City Councilman, I have come across many, many stories. And this is something that we really have to work on to ensure that families and children are protected. Well, thanks for joining me. Tune in next week, 2 o'clock for In the Know with David O. And if you want to hear today's podcast, go to www.dbam.com. Go to the menu section, Programs In the Know with David O, and you'll be able to hear this show and all our other shows. Tune in next week. Okay, fantastic. Listen, we're going to bring you here. We're going to bring microphone and myself. We'll take a picture. Susan, we're going to leave you right in that chair.
Okay, perfect.
This is our, like, we were in the studio picture.